I'm going to call the meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for September 15th, 2021 to order. Tonight we have 5 of our regular members. Member Stephen Bernard, Member Stephen Lianis, Fire Chief Brian Nardelli, Member James Sweeney, Chair Kenneth Galligan. Our Zoning Enforcement Officer, Building Superintendent, and Clerk to the Zoning Board, Mr. James Plouffe. Our recording secretary tonight is Christine Brophy. I would ask anyone that has an electronic device, telephone or whatever, please put it on silent. It does become distracting if phones are ringing in the room. If you need to use your telephone, I would appreciate it if you just step out into the hallway. Prior to the start of tonight's hearing, anybody that's scheduled for a hearing tonight has the opportunity to withdraw without prejudice. Is there anyone here tonight that's scheduled to be heard that wants to be withdrawn? Okay. We do have several cases that have been withdrawn prior to this evening's hearing, and I'm going to read those, and they will not be heard tonight. They are going to be heard at a future date. It'll be re-advertised just as it would be for a new hearing. The first one is 2183, the petition of Dufiat Berlange, Jean, 30 Kennedy Circle, Southeastern Mass, for a variance from Article 3, Section 2710, Table 2, and Article 4, Section 2729, for a mixed use to allow 5 residential apartments, a variance for green space, and seeks to convert an existing building into a 100-seat restaurant, which lacks required parking spaces for the same, but has in writing legal permission to have additional shared parking with the abutting church in a C2 zone located at 1159 Main Street. So if you're here tonight for that case, it will not be heard tonight. The next one that has been withdrawn is petition 2185, the petition of Cadet Enterprises Incorporated, 12 Riverside Drive, Pembroke, Mass, for a special permit from Article 4, Section 2729, subsection 3G, to operate a Dunkin' Donuts with seating and a drive-through window in a C2 zone located at 645 Crescent Street and Plot 1 Electric Avenue. That case will not be heard. The next one that has been withdrawn is 2186, the petition of James Meeks, 36 Draper Street, Brockton, Mass, for a variance from Article 3, Section 27.9, Article 3, Section 27.13a, and Article 3, Section 27.14, to subdivide an existing lot of record into 2 lots and construct a single-family dwelling on the newly created lot, which lacks frontage, width, and area, and the existing house also needs relief due to lack of side and frontage, located in an R1C zone at 88 Kingman Street. So if you're here for that case tonight, it will not be heard. The last case that has been withdrawn is 2187, the petition of James Meeks, 36 Draper Street, Brockton, Mass, for a variance from Article 3, Section 27.9, Article 3, Section 27.13a, and Article 3, Section 27.14, to subdivide an existing lot of record into 2 lots and construct a single-family dwelling on the newly created lot, which lacks frontage, width, and area, and the existing house needs relief due to lack of side and frontage in an R1C zone located at number 94 Kingman Street. So those cases have been withdrawn. They will not be heard tonight. All right, the order of the meeting will be, when the case is called, the petitioner who will be speaking to the board on behalf of the case will come up to the podium, and the person speaking at the podium, we would recommend that you not use a face mask because it really muffles what is being said. Everybody sitting in the audience should have a mask on, but that person who will be speaking at the podium, we will allow you to remove the mask. The petitioner will come up to the podium, speak to the board, make the presentation to the board. When the petitioner has finished the presentation, I will then open it up to the board members to ask any questions that they may have of the petitioner. If they have any questions about what was just said, that's the proper time for the board to ask that question, or any questions that they may have. Following that, I will then close that portion of the hearing, and I will open up the hearing to anyone that wants to speak in favor of the petition. When we have finished that section, I will close that, and I will open it up to anyone that wants to speak in opposition. When we have finished that, I will close that portion of the hearing, and I will ask if there's any elected officials that want to speak on the issue. Following that, I will close the public hearing. I will then open it up to deliberations from the board. Now, this is the point at which the board will take into consideration everything that has been said tonight, and the board will make their decision. The deliberation of the board is strictly deliberation between board members. It does not go between the public and the board. If a board member makes a motion to grant and another board member seconds that, we will hold a vote. In order for a petition to pass, if it's a 5-0 vote, 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative, the petition will be granted. If the vote is 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, the petition will be granted. If the vote is 3 in favor and 2 in the negative, it will be denied. So basically what it requires is a minimum of 4 affirmative votes. Following the vote, the roll call will be called by the clerk. He will tell me what the vote is. I will announce the decision of the vote, and I will tell you whether or not the petition has been granted. We have received a letter from the law office of John McCluskey relative to the petition at 645 Crescent Street, and that case is not going to be heard. And the other notice I have is from 1159 Main Street. They are in the process of garnering additional information to present to the board, so they are not going to be heard tonight. And the other two, as I read, was 88 and 94 Kingman Avenue. They are not prepared tonight to go before the board. So those are the 4 that will not be heard. So, have I covered everything? Good. All right. The first petition before the board tonight is petition number 21-80. The petition of Noah Lee Andre, 106 Moraine Street, Brockton, Mass., for a variance from section 27-9 to convert a single-family home into a two-family home in an R2 zone located at 106 Moraine Street. Is the petitioner here? Is the petitioner ready to come before the board for 106 Moraine Street? Are you going to speak on 106 Moraine Street?
He's on his way, but there's a traffic. I'm wondering if you can call another case until he makes it there. If not, then I'll speak on his behalf.
Okay, do you want to delay until
Please,
he gets here?
If I could.
Okay, what we will do is we will delay that case till the end of the evening. We'll come back to that case at the end of the evening.
Okay.
It's up to you whether you want to wait or go forward.
Yes, we would delay that and then we present at the end.
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand you.
Yes, you could delay that, then we'll present
Okay,
at the end.
all right with the board? We'll delay that one till the end of the evening? Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right, very good. The next petition, 2181, the petition of Neil Siskin, 360 Belmont Street, Brockton, Mass., to take down an existing sign and replace it with a message board sign in a C1 zone located at 360 Belmont Street.
Good evening.
Please identify yourself to the clerk.
Neil Siskind, owner of 360 Belmont Street. I'm here this evening to seek the board's approval of a digital message board sign that we're seeking to install in the exact location of my existing sign. The purpose behind the sign is to help promote the legal services that my office provides to the community, as well as other legal services of associate counsel that we work with. We also are looking to educate the public on various insurance issues that people may not be aware of through this message board, and also to use it as a way to help promote the various events in the community that are run by local groups that we also are involved in terms of community events. We find that there's a lot of groups that put a lot of time, effort, and resources into events, and because of limited resources, they're unable to promote them, and Belmont Street is a very well-traveled street. We're looking to help promote events for those groups, as well as other city and civic events that are going on. We've presented information to the board that includes a schematic as well as a certified site plan. Again, the location of the sign is going to be in the same spot where our current sign is.
So what you're looking for tonight is permission to change that sign to an electronic signboard.
Correct.
You're also looking for relief from the 10-foot setback that's required from the sidewalk to your property,
That is correct.
okay? And the other thing that you haven't mentioned is that sign is going to be within 100 feet of a residential zone, which is that 2765I, so you're going to have to request relief from that, because across the street from you is residential.
Well, directly across the street is a gas station, and there are some residences to the left of that, but yes, we're seeking relief for all of those reasons. This will be a sign that in the evening, in the later evening hours, will be dimmed, so it will not be a distraction to residents in the late hours of the night, and will still be on, but at a much lower setting.
Any questions from the boards?
Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just real quick, what you want to replace it with that 6-foot setback? Is there a reason you can't move it to 10 feet? It looks like there is some space behind that by what you're, even if it's not 6, you could probably come back a little bit, going by whatever your calculations. I could be wrong looking at this, but I was wondering why it couldn't be at least moved back a little bit.
Scott Barry, Homeland Engineering. If we moved it to the 10 feet, it would go into the existing parking lot. Then we would, we would have some traffic flow issues. It would interfere with the travel way from both sides of the parking lot. Certainly have the room from the building to do it, but it just seemed like it was easier to keep it here, ask for the relief, than it was to disrupt the traffic flow.
Mr. Thank you.
Hi, guys. Could you just highlight the difference in measurement, if there is any, with the existing and the proposed?
It's in the exact same location, it's the same size.
Thank you.
The electronic message board, according to the plans that you've submitted, appears to be 8¼ feet wide and 5 feet high. Basically 8 feet wide, 5 feet high. That's a very large sign. Okay. I too have a concern about relief from the 10-foot setback. I went up and looked at the site up there. I think there's absolutely no problem whatsoever with bringing that sign back 10 feet. In other words, 4 feet back from where it is right now. My concern is that the size of that electronic message board is going to be a distraction if it's closer than 10 feet to the street. And heading east on Belmont Street, you've got traffic lights at Ash Street. I think the concern that I have is that this message board, if it's right out on the sidewalk where you're proposing to put it, it's going to become a distraction. So my opinion is that we should not grant relief. It should go 10 feet back from the street. It is a very large sign. The other thing that you need to explain, and I haven't heard anything, is the hours that this sign is going to be illuminated. What's your plans for operating this sign?
Well, I'm welcome to, any input from the board.
You're going to have to speak louder. I can't hear you up here.
Okay, there is another digital message board on Pearl Street in Brockton that's owned by J&M Pet Resort. I don't know if the
Yes.
board remembers that application. I don't know if there were requirements for the operation of the sign, that digital message board sign, but our plan would be to have it dim from 10 o'clock and then turn back to normal brightness at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Okay, the code requires that that sign be shut off at 11 o'clock at night, unless it's associated with a business that's open all night. So if your offices are not open at night, it has to be shut off between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. So is that what you're looking for?
If that's the code, we'll abide by the code.
Okay, I'm going to make a note, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The other thing that the sign companies have given us is information on the intensity of the LEDs. During the daytime, there's a certain intensity that the LEDs are used. You're probably familiar with that. But when it gets dusk, that sign has to be dimmed. And if it's not dimmed, it becomes overbearing. So are you familiar with those regulations?
I'm sure the sign design company that's going to be installing the sign will have that set as part of the dimming feature of the sign.
Correct. They should be well aware of that.
Yes.
The other thing that you need to be aware of is that this sign cannot change within 10 seconds. It can't be animated. It can't be scrolling. There can't be things jumping all over the screen.
Correct.
And whatever is on that screen has to remain for at least 10 seconds before it changes.
We understand that.
So you're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. So we've covered a couple of things here. I just want to kind of tie things together a little before we open it up for discussion. We've established that they're looking for 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. that the sign would be on. They're aware of the fact that it has to be dimmed at night. We have expressed a concern that the sign should be 10 feet back. If the board has a problem with that, we'll discuss that during our deliberations. The sign cannot be animated, and it cannot change within 10 seconds. It's all the usual things that we do, so. Any other board members have any questions on this? No? Okay, I'm going to close that. I'm going to now open it up for public discussion. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. I'm now going to open it up for anyone who wants to speak in opposition. Is there anyone here that's opposed to this sign? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there any public official that wants to be heard on this issue? We do have one letter from a public official in support of granting the sign. I think all the board members have that. I'm going to close that portion of the hearing, and now I'm going to open it up for deliberations from the board. Board members.
I mean, if it's not a public safety issue as far as a setback for the 10 feet, I have no problem with it.
The pedestals are actually bigger from what I see in his design compared to the pedestals that are in the current sign. One of the things of interest with that, though, is the cars come up past where that sign is, so it doesn't really make a difference when you're coming from Ash or Boylston seeing. Quite honestly, there's other impediments that, from Boylston, that are greater in looking at that. I guess where the cars come up, I would like to see the sign move back, though, just to stay within the 10 feet. And I think if we could get it to where it could be right at the back. I'm not sure exactly the feet. I was actually just going to the scale on here, and it looks like it could go another 3 to 4 feet. I mean, if we can get it 9 feet back, I don't think that's asking too much. I mean, I think, you know, if it's a monetary issue because you want to use the same pedestals, those pedestals actually look like they're going to be larger than the current ones that are in there anyways.
I will express my opinion, and I think there's no reason why the sign can't be 10 feet back from the sidewalk. And that's for a public safety issue. If we want to get into a discussion, we can take a separate vote on what we think the footage should be. But I have no problem with putting up this sign. It's going to be a very large sign. It's going to be something that you're certainly going to see as you're traveling on Belmont Street. My concern is the distraction of cars heading east with the traffic lights, the Dairy Queen at Ash Street. So my opinion is it should be, we should not grant relief from setback. It should be 10 feet. The hours, 11 to 7, the dimming, and all the scrolling and all the things we usually put on this thing. Any other discussion from the board members?
Mr. Chairman, could we issue the setback all the way back to that, where that curb is, so it does not, I wouldn't want to interfere traffic in regards to pedestrians in the parking lot either, because that would also become a safety concern. But could we place a stipulation and move that sign back to where it wouldn't impede that parking behind them?
It looks,
And then push the parking back. It looks like we have at least 3 to 4 feet that they could.
It did to me. I think 10 feet's not a problem. That's my personal opinion.
I think the edge of the parking lot gives it that extra boost off the street. That would be my opinion.
All right, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to move the sign back to the edge of the landscaping portion, which would probably be about 10 feet or 10 feet, and grant.
Second.
So we are not granting relief on sign setback. It's going to go 10 feet, just what the code says.
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. And then all the other things we talked about with the scrolling, the intensity, time of the light. Okay.
All noted.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, motion has been made and seconded with those stipulations. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bernard. Mr. Bernard.
Yes or no? Do you have any questions?
Yes or no, Steve?
No, I think you might have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't hear him.
Mr. Chair, there is a problem that everyone, I think the petitioner should know that I have a problem with hearing, unfortunately. So I'm going to ask questions that might have already been asked, just so I can be effective in casting my vote.
Okay, so I'll hold up on the vote.
May I ask a question?
Certainly. I'm sorry, Steve.
All right. This sign is an accessory sign. Is that correct? Meaning it's for the purpose of the occupants of the building only?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The next question is one of safety, and it may have already been asked. The location of this sign is very close to a traffic light. In your opinion, will the message board be a distraction to the traffic signals? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
Well,
Please speak up.
the digital display sign certainly will not show a traffic signal light. But in terms of the colors that are applied in graphics that are going to be displayed, there's, you know, a rainbow of colors. So the answer is we will do our best to not replicate any kind of a graphical image that's going to confuse drivers with streetlights and signals. But in terms of the message board itself, displaying images and colors, that will be something that is just based on the technology, how it gets displayed.
All right, and the next question is, at what time will the signs be turned off at night?
Well, we've been told it has to be turned off per the regulation. I'd like to just know the specific regulation that's being cited, but if the regulation is
2 p.m.
11 p.m.
11.
to 7 a.m.
Thank you.
You all set on your questions, Steve?
Yep, you're good.
All set?
You're good. Yep,
All
he's
set.
good.
Okay, so there's been a motion made and seconded with those stipulations that we gave.
Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Lanus.
Yes.
Chief Nardelli.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Chair Galligan.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that's 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
All right, the vote is 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The petition is granted with the stipulations.
Very good.
Thank you. Good
Thank
luck.
you.
The next petition is 2182, the petition of Sign Design, 170 Liberty Street, Brockton, Mass, for a variance for the 10-foot relief setback needed for the sign at the entrance to the Brockton High School, as the sign is being widened in a C2 and an R1B zone located at 466.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Scott Farrier, Homegrown Engineering. I'm representing Sign Design, who has been contracted by the school department to rebuild the long-standing billboard along Belmont Street. As part of the widening of Belmont Street and the land taking that took place, the double-sided billboard that was there was removed. They would like to put up a new billboard in roughly the same location. Because of the land taking, Mass Highway took about 10 feet of the school department's property. So instead of having a two-faced billboard, as they had previously, we now have proposed a V-shaped billboard. The nose of the billboard would be just on the school department's property, just beyond the Mass Highway property line, about 6 inches onto our property. And it's right up against the outfield fence for the baseball field. So the school department had two requests, two issues. One was obviously that we keep it outside of MassDOT's layout, and two, that we don't have it overhang into the baseball field. So the V-shaped design that Sign Design has proposed meets both of those design requirements that the school department came up with. As you folks know, it's the sign is usually used for public service announcements, school announcements. Their intention is to keep it to be used that way in the future with this new design. It's about a little more, it's about 16 feet off the ground, the bottom of the sign is, so it's pretty high up in the air. It doesn't restrict anybody's sight, doesn't cause any sight distance issues at the West Street intersection there or at the school entrance intersection. So we feel like it's in about as good a place as we can get it with those new lot line constraints that we have.
Any questions from board members?
Will there be any lighting for the sign?
Just spotlights at the very top, just shining down, just so you can, I guess, see the sign at night, but it's not illuminated at all, not digital.
Sir, the 10 feet would put you into where the fencing is?
Yes, yeah. Right now there's about 10 feet between the lot line and the outfield fence.
Understood.
Yeah, so you'd have to put it in the outfield to meet your requirement.
I am going to pause the hearing for several minutes while we get some earphones for the board member. So we'll just pause everything for a couple of minutes. Okay, we're back on.
Why don't you speak to me and see if it'll,
Does that work?
a little bit better.
Better?
Yeah. That's a little better, okay.
Okay, I'm going to reconvene the meeting of the zoning board. We are doing the presentation on the billboard at the high school, so continue.
I believe that's it, Mr. Chairman, so if there are any questions, unless you want me to start again.
Okay, board members, you have any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a question about maintaining the sign. It's still kind of the old design as our last case was LED and.
Exactly. No lighting, climb
No,
up.
How has that changed? Like, how does the crew, I would assume a one or two man crew kind of changes that billboard out, just out of curiosity?
As far as I know, it's still the old-fashioned roll of paper that they roll up like
Truck.
doing your wallpaper.
Okay, a truck, maybe an extension ladder, something like that?
Exactly.
Okay.
I think it's more of a boom truck than the ladders at this point.
Okay.
So just for clarification, the sign is not going to be lighted.
That's correct, not lit. There'll be spotlights at the very top of it shining down, just to light the sign at night, but nothing downward facing lighting, just a typical spotlight like it has currently, well, like it used to have.
Okay, so the 11 PM to 7 AM is sufficient, is what you're going to do with that sign?
Yes.
Okay, all right, 11 PM to 7 AM. Is there any particular reason why you were changing that sign from a two-sided straight sign to a V-shaped sign?
Just because if it was straight, it would either protrude into the state highway layout or over the fence, over the baseball field fence, and the school didn't want it hanging over the outfield fence.
Okay, and this sign is a sign that is an adjunct for the high school. It is not a commercial billboard.
Exactly. It's for public service announcements, school announcements, and that's how it's going to remain.
Okay, so just tell the board once again what the hardship is with this request.
The hardship would be the land taking that Mass Highway did on the property to redo Belmont Street and the West Street intersection. So because of that land taking, the previous sign was actually over the new property line that had to be removed. So we're left with this location now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, and the distance that we're talking about tonight is from the edge of the sign, not from the support post, correct?
Exactly, the outer edge of the sign.
Any other questions from any board members? So this is an accessory sign, not a non-accessory billboard. Board members, good? Good, yeah. Okay, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there any public official that wants to be heard on the issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and I am now going to open it up for deliberations by the board members. Board members.
It appears that they moved it back as far possible as they can. So I'm okay with this.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. There was an echo.
I said, it seems like they moved it as far back possible as they possibly could, so I'm okay with this.
Yeah, I'm all right with the two. The V shape actually takes some of the measurement away, making it convenient for the placement. And it is a classic placement where everyone looks for messages from the school, the plays, and everything to do with that, so.
And we agree that this will not be an LED sign. It will not be internally lighted, but it probably will be lighted from the exterior. And the lighting will be off from 11 PM to 7 AM.
I would agree. I think clearly display the hardship because of the land taking. And I think looking at it, when you see the pedestals, they're still low. Coming out of Brockton High School, I've looked at this a multitude of times since we got this information. The pedestals do not hamper seeing or where they're going to be. They don't appear to be hampering anywhere. Plus, there's a traffic light there that will help that.
Okay, there's no other comments. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded with the stipulation of granting the setback and no internal lighting, no LED, and the time of operation is from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bernard. Mr. Bernard.
Please, you can vote now.
Your vote, Mr. Bernard.
We're gonna vote now.
Vote?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Lanus.
Yes.
Chief Nardelli.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Chair Galligan.
Yes.
Chair, that's 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
The vote is 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The petition is granted.
Thank you.
Thank you. $21.83 is withdrawn. $21.84. Petition of Lynch's Towing, care of Philip Nazarella, 1063 North Main Street, Brockton, Mass., for a variance from Section 27.9, 2725, Appendix C, 27-63, subsection H, 2757, subsection 3, to operate a tow facility in the rear portion of the property, to conduct repair business within the building to be constructed, conduct sale of motor vehicles in the front portion facing West Chestnut Street, and allow compressed gravel ground covering the yard area in an R1B zone located at plots 36-3, 36-4 Linwood Street, West Chestnut, and Holland Street. This petition was before the board this past spring, and it was denied. Then the petitioner initiated court action against the board. That court action was rescinded, and the petitioner then went back before the planning board with some modifications, and that's how the petitioner is back here tonight, because the planning board heard his request for amendments to the first request, and they have allowed him, or the petitioner, to come back before the board. So that's briefly what has preceded tonight's hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Philip Nazarella, representing Lynch's Towing. With me this evening is the principal of Lynch's Towing, David Lynch, together with the principal engineer from J.K. Holmgren, Scott Farrier. And as you stated, Mr. Chairman, we were here in August 3rd for our hearing. At that time, we received 3 votes in favor, 2 dissenting votes. As a result, we appeared before the planning board, and we attempted and we did produce substantial changes to the plan. We had very worthwhile comments from the planning board, and we are willing to abide by those changes that have been suggested and we have accepted. We are here this evening to represent the similar plan that we had in August, which is in Lynch's Tow Enterprise. He desires to have a tow yard, a storage facility, outdoor storage facility for the cars in the rear, and at the front, used car sales approximating 40 cars in the front. Some of the changes that were suggested and made, I believe you have seen in the planning board decision, but we basically have agreed to eliminate the LED sign. That seemed to be a concern by the board and some of the residents, so that's gone. We are intending on doing buffer screening around the perimeter, in particular, that perimeter which abuts the residential neighborhood. I must say, and it could be for further consideration, that I walked that land last week and stood in the middle of the field, and there is a number of naturally grown trees. They have to be 40 to 50 feet tall. So I'm not quite sure how residents would see the operation or the operation would see the residents, but we are willing to put up the artificial buffer zone, which is a wall, and on top of the wall, we will have arborvitaes. There was discussion about waiving a salvage license. The only reason why this will not be a salvage operation at that facility, the only purpose for the salvage license is to allow Mr. Lynch and his company to buy parts to conduct the repair business within the garage. We also indicated that with the garage, all of the overhang doors will be facing the the industrial commercial zone. Nothing will be exposed to the residential side. I have asked previously that we be allowed to have a compressed material instead of asphalt for the parking. This compressed material is, in normal parlance for the industry, is called millings. It's basically reclaimed asphalt that has been ground up. Now, the advantage of that is it is easier to maintain and repair. It doesn't cause any dust. And unlike asphalt, when these big trucks churn, it won't dig it up, causing constant repair. So, and this is also consistent with many of the types of operations similar to Mr. Lynch's. I'll ask, the reason that we are moving forward on the variance is on the basis of, and I'm confining this to Chapter 48, Section 10, where the hardship is based upon the topography of the land. The topography of the land, it will be suggested, makes it very difficult, extremely difficult, causing a financial hardship to develop residential structures on that property. Therefore, we're asking to be able to use it in a commercial sense. And for all of those who know the area, from the location of the proposed location of Lynch's, all the way down a couple of miles to the end of the street where Pearl Street intersects West Chestnut Street, there are numerous commercial and industrial businesses that dot that landscape. This would be the last spot containing a commercial use. I'm going to turn over for a second to Mr. Farrier and ask him to show a layout of the whole facility and what we intend to do there.
Thank you, Attorney Nazarella. As Attorney Nazarella said, there's really no change to the layout from what you folks saw previously. We have a building proposed in the front, roughly in the middle of the property, and set back from West Chestnut Street with a row of parking in the front. Around the building itself, it is bituminous paving, the sections of the building that would be open to the public. The back area, which is shown as kind of a tan color on the colored plan in front of you folks, that back area would be the millings area that Attorney Nazarella spoke about. The one condition, again, as Attorney Nazarella mentioned, that the planning board asked for was a 6-foot-high earth berm with 20-foot-tall arborvitaes along the lot line of Ramsdale Street on our property, just to give a further buffer to the residential properties on Linwood Street, in addition to the existing trees that are there now. The other item that Attorney Nazarella mentioned, the hardship as far as the topography goes, if the land was to be developed residentially, there's about a 12-foot difference in grade from West Chestnut Street to the back of the property. Mr. Lynch's proposed use, the 12-foot difference in grade doesn't make that much of a difference for his proposed use. As a residential use, that 12-foot difference in grade would cause the developer to have to bring in a substantial amount of fill in order to make the drainage work. In addition to that topographic issue, the groundwater issue that's out there would also cause the houses, if they were built on the property, to have to be raised up about 8 feet from the existing grade, causing the entire site would basically have to be filled in order to put houses on the property. With Mr. Lynch's building, where it's basically a slab building, there is no basement, there are no groundwater concerns, so all of those topographic issues with his proposed use become a moot point. That's what I have on that one.
If I'm correct, Mr. Ferry, I also understand that they would have to develop a 1,000-foot road from West Chestnut Street to the rear in order to establish and construct perhaps 6 residential units. I don't think there's anybody in the building that has more knowledge about building development and construction than Mr. Ferry, who deals with those disciplines every single week. We've calculated that in order to develop that roadway, bring in the utilities, the water, et cetera, sewer, and develop the lot to make it prime and available for residential structure would be close to $150,000 to $200,000. That will not sell. No developer is going to buy that to build. It would be, hence the financial hardship that 40A allows relief for. We therefore find that in order to develop for commercial purposes, some of that would not have to be done. Now, I know there are, and there have been in the past, and there are here this evening, residents who have concern about several issues, and I had heard at the last meeting we had about oil getting into the ground. These buildings all have oil separators to prevent that. Trucks don't idle. What do you call that type of truck? Clean burn. Clean burn. They shut down after 5 minutes if they're idling. The additional benefit of Lynch's Towing being at that location is that currently they are housed in the south end of Brockton. They, on a daily basis, visit Route 24 to take care of overturned trucks. They visit all various aspects throughout the city on behalf of the fire department, the police department, and in order to get to Route 24 from where they are, they're coming up Linwood and West Chestnut Street. With the location that is proposed, they will not be going up those streets. They will not be disturbing the neighbors. And as far as an increase in traffic, that is only speculative, and there's no corroboration to believe that there would be an increase in traffic. He's only going to be looking to sell 40 cars in the front. If you go down the street 100 yards, you have Copeland Toyota with about 300 or 400 cars out there. And I have not heard of any major conglomeration of traffic and snarling vehicles because of Copeland Toyota. So this proposal is only going to be a fraction of what is in the existing neighborhood. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the board if they have any questions.
Board members.
I do. If I understand correctly, just driving up there now a number of times, Ramsdale is a paper street, correct?
Excuse me?
Ramsdale is a paper street. It does not exist. Like, okay.
No vehicles will be going down, Chief, no vehicles will be going down Ramsdale Street. That is the street that is closest to the residential area. All of Lynch's trucks will only be allowed to go up and down Holland Street.
Holland.
So Ramsdale Street's going to be closed off.
Okay, and that street doesn't, that's not going to be developed then? It's just everything will go with Holland. Is that correct, Council?
Correct.
And so all trucks in and out, bay doors, everything's going to still face the industrial area, if that's correct?
Correct. And he doesn't operate after hours, and most of the cars that he retrieves only stay on the lot a few days, except if it's a criminal matter, a shooting or what have you, and there's an arrest, then they're impounded for maybe a week or 2 weeks.
So I guess that brings me to my next question. I don't want to interject here, but that means with this salvage license, I've read a lot about salvage licenses. We're not in a position where people will be maintaining cars in that front lot, in that back lot, any of that stuff. This is, if I understand correctly, as you stated, these parts in the salvage license is for Mr. Lynch's repair operations on site.
That's correct.
Housed in the garage, not out in the back lot.
It is not going to be a salvage yard.
Understood.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Can you please highlight the placement of the suggested arborvitae line from the planning board?
It is right in this location, where the.
I'm sorry, what street is that, Mr. Vario?
This is Ramsdale.
That's Ramsdale, okay.
That was speaking of, so we're putting it right on, Ramsdale's a private road with Maple Street. Technically, we own up to the center line of the road. The folks on the other side own up to the center line. We're putting the 6-foot earth berm and 20-foot arborvitae right along our lot line, so to speak, of Ramsdale.
Okay.
So that would protect basically the four abutters on Linden Street.
Now, what about the residents on West Chestnut?
We don't have anything across the front. We would have a fence along the side. We do have a little bit of earth berm, just to pick up the grade, but nothing, not a significant lighting wall on West Chestnut.
Well, seeing that plan, would you be opposed to putting that same barrier on West Chestnut so that the neighbors with that 6 foot and the 20, so that they don't have to look directly into that?
I don't know, but I don't know that having 20-foot trees right along the street would be a good idea.
Well, setback, of course, because there is plenty of room there. Am I mistaken?
Well, we'll do something to dress it up and make it look aesthetically nice, but we don't want to block off the business either with the trees. And it's kind of be like a moat around the building that you wouldn't be able to see anything. So we would make it inviting, clean. I mean, we understand what the concern is, that it looks as pleasing as possible, but it's a commercial business. If we put trees in front of the front, I think that would defeat the whole purpose.
Okay.
We'll have plantings there, but I don't think they would be 8 feet tall.
Okay.
So the hardship that you're saying goes with this piece of property is the topography of the property.
That is correct. I mean, Mr. Chairman, I could talk about Lynch's involvement in the city for years and years, and when referenced before, it was simply for background information. That wasn't his hardship. The fact that he was one location, going to move to another location, the hardship is based on Section 10 of Chapter 48, the statute, which states that if there's an issue with topography, which will result in developing the land, thereby causing a financial hardship to the owner, therein lies the basis for the variance. Now, I would like to point out at one last item. I know there were concerns, what will this be like, and there'll be noise, there'll be traffic. All of that is uncorroborated because it doesn't exist. I can recall maybe 30 years ago in this city, a business wanted to come into town, and not only the immediate area in the ward, but the whole city was against it. It was going to be the ruination of Brockton. It was going to be the Sodom of Gomorrah of this whole municipality, and that was Frank's. They were going to have an adult club on Pearl Street. It went up to the Supreme Court of Massachusetts. They reversed the denial of the zoning board. The business was established, and today, I think we agree, if anyone goes up and down Pearl Street, nobody even knows what it is or what happens there. It passed. Secondly, this property was owned by the Bertarelli family for a lot of years. Bertarelli family is well known of not only owning a lot of land, but developing a lot of land. If that property was capable of being built upon for residential purposes, there would be houses there already built by the Bertarellis. But it had never been done for the reasons I had stated, and hence the reason we're asking for the grant of the variance based upon the topographical issues that we have on the land.
Who is the owner of the property right now?
It's under agreement with the Bertarellis and Mr. Lynch.
So currently, right now, Mr. Bertarelli owns the property.
That is correct.
So there's an agreement that if this is passed, then a deal will be made.
Correct.
Okay, so Mr. Lynch is not the owner of the property at this point.
No, he's the intended purchaser.
Can you tell us how many cars are going to be stored on this property?
350. It was originally 400. We reduced it by 50.
So 350 cars. By today's standards on what is being done with Lynch's towing, is there a need for 350 car storage?
The need is based upon the demand, based upon what's brought in there, how many calls he gets. But I believe he wants to respond to that.
Good afternoon, Board. Unfortunately, the job that I do, I work for the city, the state, the federal government, the DA's office. At every turn, I don't know who's an attorney in this room, we have to hold cars, trucks, whatever it's going to be, for a substantial amount of time when a crime has been committed by the person, whether it be a robbery, and I'm not supposed to say where the cars are being held. What happens is I'm responsible for those cars, and I've been responsible for these cars for 24 to 27 years. I need to store these cars. They're not going to be out front. I got to keep them hidden. People don't even know where the cars are. Unfortunately, I'm on TV right now, so people are going to know. But what happens, they get kept very tight. So when someone goes in, they're allowed, you know, after 2-3 years, they go to trial, the car gets brought out, we bring the car to the courthouse, whether it be here, Plymouth, Superior Court here, Bristol County, Norfolk, wherever it's got to go. I need to hang on to those cars. And as you know, just last week alone, I took in 7 more just in the shootings of what goes on in the city now. The cars need to be held. And I'm the person, the chosen one, who's been to do this. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I have to ask you to do this, but we need a place to put these cars. We've run out of places. If anybody's ever been down the state police barracks, they are beyond capacity down there. They can't pull their own cruisers in, and it's horrible. And I know it's not your fault, it's my responsibility. And I keep them neat, I keep them clean. I promise you that I'm not here to put fluids in anybody's wells. I've utmost respect for everybody's land, property, and I want to just do my job, maintain what I'm supposed to do. I'm facing against the other commercial property. I shut my lights out. Brewster Ambulance was there for years. They left there with sirens and lights going. I don't do that. You guys saw me this morning on TV. I'm out here rolling the tractor-trailer trucks over at Harrison Boulevard this morning. I'm the one who's responsible for keeping 24, 495, and 93 open. It's my job.
Okay, we understand what
Yeah,
that's all about.
But that's why I was trying to explain to you about the storage, why I need a large storage facility to hold
We
these
needed to
vehicles.
understand why you needed 350 spaces for storage, and I think you've explained why.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, sir, talking too much.
The salvage license. Can you explain to the board what you intend to do with this salvage license, and what is the salvage license?
The salvage license is what they call a Class 3 license. If I take in a vehicle that needs to be repaired, a cruiser, an ambulance, and we need parts. We're running in short on parts right now. We've been running short. And what happens is we'll go on and we buy the cars, but you have to have a salvage license to be able, you can't just go into the Class 2 dealer to go and buy them. So we buy the vehicles. If I need parts vehicles, I keep 20 cruisers at one time. But if I run short, I need to run in, I need to go to whatever state, I need to buy 2 or 3 more. We need for motors, trainees, doors, whatever it is, or parts for our own stuff. We need to buy the vehicles, we bring them back, we take them apart for our own use. I'm not a picket yard, I'm not Everett's Auto Parts, I'm not Brockton Auto Parts. We're not there to do that.
So you're saying you're willing to give up that salvage license?
If I have to do it, and it's gonna be a problem, but I have to do that, or ask you if you let me keep it at the back of the property, but I have to do what I have to
My
do.
concern is that with a Class 3 salvage license, that down the road, what goes on in this backyard with 350 cars could be a situation where cars are there for long periods of time in disrepair.
I've had the license for a long time. I've never let this board down. I've never been in front of
So
a
how
city
can
board.
how can you continue to operate if you don't have a salvage license?
That's why I'm here tonight, and I'm
You have a
asking
salvage
myself.
license at your other location on West Chestnut Street.
Right, and that's what we're using, that's where we're keeping it now, and you don't see it at the back of the property. And that's why I'm hoping that I can ask you for the back part. There's 2 parcels. One's the front parcel of property that will have the nice building with the decorative stone veneer, I guess you call it, that's on the front of the building. And it'll be dressed real nice. You'll be very happy with it. In the back of the property, where it's fenced and behind the arborvitaes.
Okay, so what you've suggested to the planning board was that you were willing to give up this Class 3 salvage license for this location.
Yes.
My question to you is, do you currently hold and intend to keep a salvage license Class 3 at your other location on West Chestnut Street? Do you have one for that location?
No, I don't.
Okay, so if you gave up the salvage license, then you are without a salvage license.
That is correct.
Okay,
What we would like to do, retain the salvage license without a salvage operation, only used for the purposes of obtaining parts needed for automobiles.
okay.
That way, it allays the concern of the board and anyone else that it's not going to be, as Mr. Lynch said, a Everett's or Brockton Auto Parts.
Can you explain to us what provisions have been made for drainage if you put this reclaimed asphalt in this 1,000-foot backyard?
Oh, yes. They are called oil water separators. They're giant tanks that get buried inside the ground that have grates on them like you would see against a sidewalk on a public road. And what happens is if any fluid leaks out of it, if any fluid leaks out and it goes into the storage tanks, what happens is the tanks get pumped once a year by either Clean Harbors or Sin Environmental, the same way that I run my property on Montello Street.
So right now, all of this property up there is porous. It's covered with loam.
Yes,
It's farmland.
yes,
If this is developed and hard surface is put on this back parking lot,
yes.
now we got to deal with water runoff that was not there before.
Yep, go ahead, sorry.
That's my question is, what happens to the water runoff relative to the neighbors?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of this whole approval process, if we get through the zoning board of appeals, our next step is to file for site plan approval, go to tech review, go to the planning board for site plan approval. At that point, we do a full engineered design of the parking lot, both the permeable paving and the pervious millings. There would be a subsurface infiltration system that would handle any of the increased runoff, Mr. Chairman. It's, you know, currently the way things are in the city with the planning board and the conservation commission, everything gets sent out to a outside consultant for review of our engineering data. So that would be the next step in the design process. But we would anticipate a subsurface infiltration system just because we don't have the land area to do an old-fashioned detention basin.
So for the size of this lot, you're suggesting that all the water that comes off this impervious surface is going to be held within that impervious surface area?
That's correct.
It will not run off into the farmland?
That's exactly it. We designed it for a 100-year storm event.
Okay. My next question is the spaces that are available in that back lot, is there any intention for the petitioner to lease any of those spaces to a third party?
No, sir. No, no, sir.
Okay. The buffer screening. I'm a little confused on how this is ever going to be accomplished. You're talking about building a 6-foot berm.
Correct?
How wide would the top of the berm be? 10 feet?
At a 3-to-1, sure, about 10 feet.
Okay.
Correct.
So now you're proposing to plant arborvitaes on the top of that berm.
Yes.
And from what I'm hearing from planning was the number 20. 20-foot arborvitaes are going to be put on top of the 6-foot berm.
20 foot tall, yes.
Where are you ever going to find 20-foot arborvitaes?
The forest. There are landscape companies that can provide them, certainly not around here. I believe, honestly, I believe there's one in Pennsylvania that sells full-size trees. It happens if you cut down a full-size maple in my yard and I sue you for it, you've got to replace it. There are companies that provide them.
Okay, so you're telling the board that from the time this berm is built and those arborvitaes are planted, that they will already have a grown height of 20 feet,
On day one.
okay? And can you tell the board that when these arborvitaes are planted on the top of this berm, what's the distance between the arborvitaes?
We would certainly talk to the landscape company and do it as they would suggest, but I would say they're most likely to probably be 12 to 15 feet on center. They don't get horribly wide. They're certainly tall. They're full at the bottom, but a tree even of that size is probably about a 12 or a 15-foot in diameter.
I think it's fair that whatever distance it would be to eventually cause a screen when they become fully developed is the distance we would put them in.
All right, the reason I'm asking the question is on the plan, it shows that on a berm that has been drawn on this plan, there are 10 trees. That puts the trees 22 feet apart. That's not much of a screening. That's why I asked the question. All right, so beyond that, what happens on the automobile storage side of the berm? Is there a chain link fence going to be constructed, or what goes on that side?
The entire parking area would have a chain link fence.
So the chain link fence is put up for security of the vehicles in the lot,
Correct.
and the berm is on the outside of the chain link fence, and you're telling us that that berm is going to be 6 feet high, it's going to be as shown on the plan, but instead of being 22 feet apart, they're going to be maybe 10 or 12 feet apart. Okay, that's not what it shows on the board. All right. Is there any reason why that berm didn't extend further southerly to protect the people that are more southerly from this location? It appears as though the only place that these trees have been placed is in that opening that you can see from Linwood Street.
Yep. Yeah, I think that the main thing that we were looking to buffer was the residents looking at the building, the 25-foot tall building. It wasn't so much to screen it from the entire property. It was really just to screen it from the building, Mr. Chairman.
Can you tell the board,
That's a major issue. We can extend the screening.
can you tell the board what kind of vehicles will be stored on this lot?
Kind?
What kind? Are we looking at sedans, SUVs, cube trucks, tractor trailers? What would be stored in this lot?
Mostly cars and trucks.
Mostly cars and trucks.
Accidents on the highway.
Right, so my point is, a box truck could be stored out there,
Could be, yes.
okay?
Yep.
Can you tell us approximately any length of time on average, how long a vehicle would be sitting on this lot?
10 to 15 days, Mr. Lynch's answer.
10 to
Mr.
15 days?
Yes.
Okay. If there is a need for a wrecker or a flatbed truck to transport a vehicle into this location at 10 o'clock at night, how is that going to be handled?
Go ahead, Mr. Lynch.
The vehicle will come in from Holland, will come in on Holland Street. You'll come in, and just as you get to the end of Holland Street, sir, I'm gonna have a gate. I'm very good about the gate. I put coating on it. I've been in residential areas from Carey Street to Montella Street, so I know how to address the neighbors. Keep it quiet, no lights. The gates slide open. The gate slides open, goes to the back of the property, and the car gets put into a hole, picture gets taken of the car, and then logged in. But it's not gonna be, they're gonna be assigned to holes. Slots, I guess that would be the word for it.
So it shows a sliding gate on this plan. You're saying to us that at night, the car would be stored inside that sliding gate? The truck would not be traversing out in this back lot?
I'm sorry, the question you asked me again, sir?
The truck that's towing the vehicle would not be towing this vehicle out into the rear lot? You're saying it's going to be kept up at the building?
What would happen is, at the end of, may I point? Is that okay? What I do, sir, is, come down, I'm gonna come down Holland Street right here. I'll come down to Holland Street, and at the end of Holland Street, there's gonna be a gate. Majority of the cars are still gonna stay at 790. I'm gonna try very hard to have immediate cars that take it in at night. So leave them at 790, which is my building next door. When the cars come in, they'll come in on Holland Street. When you pass by my building and the back of the property, before you get onto what we're gonna call the grindings, millings, whatever the proper word is, that's technical, we'll come onto there, and the vehicles will be brought in and put into parking spots on the property. The ones that are left over, they'll know where to put it, or the car will be picked up and run in the morning. If a vehicle, we use forklifts, sir, and on the front of the forklifts, they have what they call wheel lifted down, they wrap around the wheels, and we're able to motion a vehicle in and out of a parking spot with ease.
All right, so I thought the last time you were here, that there was mention of hours that this was going to be totally shut down, and that back lot was not going to be used. Can you,
That lot would need to be used, because if I had to bring something in, I would need to go to the back of the property. I'm not coming in on Railway Street, I'm coming in off of
okay,
Hall.
so that's my question then. So this whole facility is going to be open 24/7?
No, sir, absolutely not. Same way we shut down now. I shut down my facility at 6 o'clock at night. We shut down. Cruisers get put behind the fence, but if a vehicle needs to come in at night, majority of the time, they're still gonna stay at 790, which is our primary spot we are now. The repair garage, this is what we're trying to do to get us off Montello Street. We need to come in here at nighttime. If we have a problem, we can't, a vehicle's larger or needs to come in, same way I come in at Montello Street, same way I've come in at Cary Street for 30 years. Don't have any problems. I come in, the guy's good about it, they bring it in, put it in a hole, they're done, they go home. There's no lights, the doors aren't wide open at night, they come into a gate, they're not making a lot of noise running the fences back and forth. I don't wanna make bad neighbors.
Okay, I guess my question was then, if need be, a vehicle could be towed into the back lot
Yes.
at 11 o'clock at night?
Yes.
That could happen?
That could, yes.
All right. What is the situation with the lighting of this whole property where you have a security problem here to secure these cars? Can you explain to us, there's no plans here on what you're gonna do for lighting?
We have hired a lighting engineer, and on the lighting engineer, poles will be on the inside, and they'll take on, the lights will shine down, not out toward the main shore, when this is explained, that the lights will shine down to the ground from the telephone, from the pole or beyond, and they'll also have security cameras on there, so that the city and the DA's office is able to watch the vehicles 24 hours a day. There'll be almost like an aluminum pole, sir, so the pole will go up and the cameras will be affixed to the pole, and the lights will shine down on the property, not into people's windows or light up their yards.
All right, I don't want to ask too many more questions, but the one that surprises me here is the salvage license. Apparently, the agreement with the planning board was that you were willing,
Yep, and I will.
no longer intends to transfer his salvage license. Okay, well, it doesn't say that there will no longer be, it says intends to transfer. So what I'm hearing from you is that if you don't have this salvage license, you're going to be severely impaired in what you can do up there. Okay.
Because I had asked for the salvage license to be out to the front office, and that was one of the stipulations that they asked me that I didn't have it there, because I think the perception is that people think that I'm gonna have cars sitting out there with fenders and motors and doors sitting there, and the word salvage and towing sounds terrible.
So if I could, Mr. Chairman, I think, just so I think everyone's clear here, that salvage license does not involve people coming, buying parts, trading parts. That's what I want to be clear on, because I think the chairman that might be one of his concerns.
My concern with the salvage license is this is not going to turn out to be something that is an allowed use in an I-3 zone. And what you're proposing to do is allowed in an I-3. We're dealing here with a residential zone. And there's a whole host of things going on here as far as selling vehicles. All of this stuff is not allowed within a residential zone. And the whole thing is hinging on a hardship of topography of the lot and all of this other things. These are all periphery things that are playing into this. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, all you have to do is make it as a condition of the grant.
Yeah, you could say that, but what I'm saying is there are so many concerns here relative to this commercial location in a residential zone that there would be a litany of restrictions that would be put on this. So,
Well, it's not dissimilar than a lot of other grants given. You see issues that you don't want to arise, you make them a condition of the grant. If it's violated, the gentleman in front of you knows what to do about it.
Okay, are there any other questions from the board to the petitioner? All right, you good, Steve? Okay, I'm going to move along, and I am now going to open this up to, is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor of this petition?
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Attorney Mark Adams. I'm here on behalf of George Millett, who's in the butter to this project, and he asked me to speak on his behalf in favor of it. He strongly supports it and asked the board to grant the relief sought. Thank you.
I have a question of Mr. Adams. Who are you representing?
George Millett,
And where is George Millett in relation to this property?
I believe he's across the street on Walnut Street. It's the property of West Bridgewater, but he's a statutory abutter and received notice relative to this project.
He did receive notice.
He did.
So he's in West Bridgewater?
The property, yeah, that he abuts is, I believe, the entire property that he owns is in West Bridgewater, yes.
Okay, very good, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else here that wants to speak in favor? We have one letter that has come in favor of an abutter at 20 Holland Street, which would be on that side street immediately adjacent to where this is proposed to go. That party is speaking, or has notified the board that they are in favor of granting this. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in favor? Counselor, can I hold you until we get to the public officials section? Thanks. All right, if there's no one else in favor, is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Attorney Robert Galvin. I sent a letter over earlier today via email. I brought several copies with me in the event that you need hard copies, if I could
We
hand
have
that
them.
forward, if you don't mind.
Do we all have them?
I've already read it.
I've read it.
Christine,
I'll
They
take
were
one.
sent to everybody, email.
so we have,
Do you have them?
do we all have hard copies?
No.
Okay, I'm sorry then, come forward with your hard copy.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, so you realize we don't have time to read all this right now, so you're going to have to just kind of summarize what your petition is.
I'd be happy to.
Good.
Okay. So as I indicated, my name is Attorney Robert Galvin. I'm a municipal attorney. That is the predominance of my practice. I actually am a town council, and I represent several communities in the eastern part of the county, as well as a community north of Boston, the town of Stoneham. I've been practicing this type of law for the last 29 years. I was contacted by some of the abutters, Ms. Athena Diorio of 735 West Chestnut Street, Alex and Raquel Vile of 745 West Chestnut Street. That's the property owner that's right above, across the street from Holland Street, where the proposed entrance of vehicles is going to occur in the evening. The Diorio property is right next to that, right across the street. I've included with my submission some assessor's maps which locate those two properties. I also represent Dan and Kathy Ciola of 362 Linwood Street. They're located just to the west of the property, and several other abutters have contacted me even during the course of the day to represent them. Stephen Dirksmeyer of 380 Linwood Street, and Tony Harreluk, 365 Linwood Street, who, by the way, owns property that abuts the Ramsdale Street, in which the proponent is looking to make improvements claiming rights of ownership. I'll get to that in a minute. Christina Harreluk of 365 Linwood, Robert McFadden of 95 Overton, Alex Maria and Manuel Mendez of 367 Linwood. I submitted the letter so that I don't have to say everything that I have said in the letter, and I'll spare you all of those details, but as the board is clearly aware, based on the questions you've asked the petitioner, this is basically a major league ask. They are asking you to do what the city council and the legislative body of the town could do, and that would be to change the zoning from residential to commercial by allowing them to basically disregard the provisions of the bylaw that have been voted on and approved by the city. They're asking you to allow commercial and/or industrial, depending on how you view this, intrusion into a long-standing residential neighborhood. These people that I represent and their families have been here for a significant period of time. The existing property owned by the Bertarellis is currently improved with farmland. It's taxed in agricultural use. That way it doesn't have to pay a significant amount of taxes. It's a perfect buffer to the residential neighborhood from some of the uses that exist further down the street approaching Route 24. My clients are adamantly opposed to this proposed use. A tow yard, automotive repair, an automotive and truck, including box truck storage yard for vehicles that will come in at any time of day or night, and a used car dealership. These people have a right to ask you, and hopefully you'll accede to their request, that you protect them, because this bylaw was enacted to protect them, particularly in residential areas, not to protect somebody that looks to ask you to disregard the bylaw. My memo was predicated on the evidence that I had prior to tonight, and that was, there was no evidence that there was anything unique about the soil, shape of this lot, or the topography of this lot in any way, shape, or form mentioned. Tonight, for the first time, I heard that there's some unique topographic conditions on this property. And I'm told that it'll cost $150,000 to $200,000 to maybe develop this if it was to be developed into 6 residential lots. Well, we all know that there are many other alternatives to residential development. There's several permitted uses. There are several special uses that could be made of this property, all of which are allowed by right, and my clients wouldn't have any ability to object to. The topography, and I am not an engineer, but I did look at the plan as I heard the statements being made that there's some type of a 12-foot gap. There appears to be a small knoll in a small section of the land near West Chestnut, which would obviously, if the site was going to be leveled, be spread across the site. The front elevation is 116 on West Chestnut Street. The back elevation near Tupelo Street is 115. That's a 1 foot change in grade over a distance of some 700 or 800 feet scaled back. That's not a significant change in elevation. That's less than a 1% grade. And if the knoll of land that's apparently the claim here is a problem, it's the same problem for anyone, and it would certainly be flattened out. The argument that this would cost more for a residential development was predicated on the fact that everybody would have a basement. We all know homes that are built on slabs. Any multifamily building is probably built on a slab and doesn't have a foundation. The reality is residential development is appropriate on this land and could be easily done. And I doubt very, very much that there'd be any type of additional cost associated with this. And the fact that there's a knoll of earth there doesn't require you to find that all of a sudden this property is appropriate for a tow yard, for a used car dealership, for a storage yard, and for automotive repair. They just don't connect with one another, and that was the second point that I wanted to make. But let's assume that there was a unique there was a topographic condition here. The applicant would also be obligated to tell you how that's not a condition that affects any other properties in this residential district. They haven't even mentioned any other properties. I've said that there has to be a connection between the topographic feature and the hardship. There is no financial hardship to this applicant. They don't even own the property yet. We heard a lot about property at Montello Street and some conditions that occurred there. It sounds to me tonight like they want to move their Montello operations to this property, which certainly is shocking to my clients. It sounds to me like they have a personal hardship. They don't have an appropriate site somewhere else, and they think it should be here. None of those are legally cognizable hardships that justify the board exercising this extraordinary relief. And I think it's fairly obvious from the cases that I cited that a use variance of the nature that's being sought here are disfavored. It is a commercial intrusion into a residential area and represents the single greatest danger to the integrity of a zoning district when a board exercises this type of discretion, and should only be done in rare and unusual cases, not a case like this one. I did notice that there are other provisions of the bylaws that don't appear to be taken into account, and I'm trying to summarize this quickly, but I heard that the berm and the trees are going to be located within the layout of Ramsdale Street. The law is called the derelict fee statute, and assuming that the Bertarelli property has rights in Ramsdale Street, their rights of ownership extend to the middle of the road, and the Herelick property and the Mendez, who own the property on the other side, own to the other middle. But the significance of that is they also share easements in the entirety of the way, and the proposal to put a berm and trees 20 feet wide is actually an obstruction to the easement rights of the Mendez and the Herelicks. Completely inappropriate, against their legal rights, should be on the property, not on an off-site street. And the street exists, it's just not been constructed, and there's no evidence that the street has been legally abandoned. There's no evidence that the rights in the street have been legally extinguished. And until either of those have been adjudicated, it is completely inappropriate to make any improvements of this nature, including obstructing any portion of Ramsdale Street. In a residential district, people are basically obligated or restricted from developing more than 25% of their property. That's the maximum impervious coverage. I don't know what they've calculated the proposed impervious coverage of this property to be, but I would be surprised if it was less than 75%. That is so different from any other portion or any other property in this residential district. It's striking. The bylaw requires fencing and planting screens to any residential use on any abutting property, and that would be in the front of the property too. I can certainly appreciate that a used car dealer wants their used cars to be visible from the street, but that's why they should be located in a commercial district and not in a residential district. When any use that's not residential is made in a residential district, it has to be screened as the bylaw requires, and I do not believe they even requested that variance. Your bylaw requires, for good reason, that the entire parking areas of properties like this to be asphalted. That's because it's easier to contain drainage from an asphalted parking lot than a reprocessed parking lot. And I certainly understand that it's better than a gravel parking lot, which is very porous, but an asphalt parking lot is the appropriate way, in the way the bylaw requires drainage to be contained and directed to the appropriate detention basin and/or retention basins. Again, you're just being asked to take a leap of faith that the amount of impervious surfaces here can be drained. I've heard the groundwater's high. Well, if it's high here, it's high everywhere, and that's nothing unique to this property. And it's certainly going to affect the cost and expense of developing this property, because you have to have, I believe, 3 or 5 feet of separation from the bottom of the detention basin to the groundwater. And if that's the case, when this goes for site plan review, they're going to elevate this property 8 feet. The $150,000 or $200,000 they said would cost to build a house will pale in comparison to how much it cost them to develop this commercially. And lastly, well, 2 points. I've pointed out that there isn't any lighting plan. I've been told, we've been promised that there'll be a lighting plan. Well, when you live in a residential neighborhood, other than an hour of a particular day on West Chestnut Street, people will tell you this street gets kind of sleepy. And, you know, that's a relative sleepy for Brockton, but it gets quiet. This will not be quiet. It'll be noisy 24/7, can be noisy 24/7, and 350 cars stored in this lot is a tremendous amount. It's clearly going to exacerbate traffic. It's going to introduce incompatible uses to the residential uses that create light, noise, traffic, and other undesirable impacts. It's going to change or continue to erode the character of this neighborhood. It's going to impact the use and enjoyment of my clients' properties and forever alter the character of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else that wants to speak in opposition? Please come forward and give your name to the clerk. I would appreciate that you do not keep repeating what we've already heard as for opposition. If you have something new to add, it would be very helpful.
I just wanted to say good evening. I'm John Clancy. I live at 390 Linwood Street. This is a quiet family neighborhood, and I think this would definitely change that. I'm most concerned with the aesthetic and the noise. I'm raising my son there. He's in 2nd grade, and to have that commercial business moving in that close to the neighborhood, I think would definitely alter the way the neighborhood's been since I've lived there in 2009.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak in opposition? You're next. No, you're not. The ward councilor is next. If there is no one else in opposition, I will close that portion of the hearing. I'll open it up now to any elected official that wants to speak on the issue. And I think the ward councilor came first. Is he ready? Okay, we'll have the council president.
You don't need to stand on formalities. Mr. Chair, members of the zoning board, I'm Councilor at Large Winthrop Farwell. This year I'm serving as council president. I am not usually at a loss for words, for those of you who know me. But I've been sitting here listening to this presentation, and I think there are a few things that we should say at the outset. This is not about whether David Lynch is a good guy. He is. This is not about whether he runs a good business. He does. This is about a request to you to basically repurpose an entire residential parcel of land so that he can put his business there. The attorney who spoke a few minutes ago was quite right. Rezoning land, determining land use, setting standards, that is our job in the council. That is not yours. Now, every once in a while we make a mistake, and people come in here and they ask you for some relief. Here you're being asked to basically completely change this land so that somebody can have a tow lot, 350 cars, and it's in close proximity to a residential neighborhood. These folks don't deserve that. Chief Nardelli, you wouldn't want that across the street from you. Mr. Sweeney, you wouldn't want that. The chair wouldn't want that. I don't think Mr. Plouffe would. I don't think Mrs. Brophy would. Mr. Bernard, Mr. Lainas. We don't do that to our people here in Brockton. We have land use plans, we have zoning to bring some semblance of order to the city, and we've done that.
And I appreciate that this piece of land may be perfectly suited for Mr. Lynch, but it's not perfectly suited for all those people who have lived there, who have paid taxes, and who have a right to live in a residential zone free from all of the noise and all of the activity that would accompany this business. So in this case, do the right thing. There is no hardship. I mean, I heard Attorney Nazarella, who was an old friend of mine from 40 years ago, he purports to know the reason why the Bertarellis haven't built houses there. He's reached into their mind and extracted that information. That's nonsense. He purports to have walked the property, and he finds that there is a hardship in building houses. I haven't heard of any engineering study, and I would want something very detailed, prepared by professionals before I reach that type of conclusion. So in this case, and I rarely come before you, let's do the right thing. Do we want economic development in Brockton? Of course we do. But we don't want it at the expense of residents who have a right to live here, enjoy their homes, and have some peace and tranquility. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from an elected official that wants to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good evening, members of the zoning board. Dennis Anieri, City Councilor, Ward 3, have been for the last 18 years, and I have to say that I'm very proud of the people of Ward 3, residents, business, and all that I've been able to represent for those many years. I take a look at things a little differently than some of my colleagues do. And I have to say that, and I do want to be registered as being in favor of this business doing what he is doing. I'm very much one that's always sees fit to, I think, you know, and as councilors do say, we all want development, but I'm sort of strong on development, and I'm very strong when it comes to people that are in business, that have been in business for 35, 40 years, and all of a sudden they want to do something to increase the volume for their business, but at the same time, they're looking at how do we increase revenue for the city. Now, I understand, you know, I'm very friendly with West Chestnut Street, as I had lived there, and I know the noise and what it makes and what it can do and what it can't do. And for anybody to say that it's that quiet at night, I think the other attorney did. I think you're a little off base there, Mr. Attorney, because it doesn't get that quiet at night. I should know that for the noises I hear, but that's not the issue. My issue is the fact that we have a businessman that has been in business for a long time, worked hard, his family worked hard, he's very respected. Not only does he pay his taxes, but he's also a resident here in the city of Brockton. And I don't care if he lives in a 2-room ranch or a 22-room mansion, I really don't care. He's still here and he lives here in the city of Brockton. And that means a lot to me. And I do have to say, you know, one of the things that we're missing here, and I do want you people to understand, and I think it was mentioned when we were at the planning board, that one of the reasons why you know, Mr. Lynch is moving to that particular location is because the city of Brockton has a chance to have a project in the location he is at on Montello Street, which is going to drive us home at least $700,000 to $800,000 in revenue. It might have 99 units to go to that facility, but that's going to be a plus for us in this city. It's going to be a plus to help the city out. Mayor and I have had conversation in regards to this particular project on West Chestnut Street, and he doesn't foresee it in any type of difficulty. I'm sorry that it mixes in with you know, residential area, as that area does, because it's commercial residential, the same as you see in some other parts of this city of Brockton. It's an urban city, and we have a mixed flow, we really do. Just go down Manley Street. What do you got down on Manley Street? You got one side that's commercial industrial, and you've got the other side that's residential. There's no Aphrodites that is splitting it. It's the road, that's all. And the time we put the tractor place across the street, the zoning board at that particular time was happy that we were able to do something there, and the residents didn't even have a chance to even speak because we went with what we were supposed to do in honor of the commercial and residential, commercial industrial business to be put there. So I again, that's my feeling. Some people will disagree with me, I'm sure they will, some won't, but I just think that, I just don't want to see a businessman that's been in this city doing business for a long time, and not being able to get respect to want to do something within his own business and improve it, because I think he has every right to, and he'll run a clean business. I want to thank you all for paying attention to me. No one's eyes were really on, except for a couple other members, but thank you. Appreciate it very much. Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there any other elected official that wants to be heard on this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. I will now open it up for deliberation by the board. Board members, we've heard a lot of information tonight.
I'd like to mention something about the privacy barrier. I don't think it's necessary to go across West Chestnut Street, but I was just wondering how everybody felt about extending that a little bit.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
It's very hard to hear you.
I'm sorry. The privacy barrier. I don't think it's a good idea to go in front of West Chestnut, but I was wondering if what the board thinks about extending that.
I think that's probably where our major issue lies, is the privacy barrier and how it looks, depending on how this goes through. When I made this suggestion on the planning board, it was kind of under the understanding that the business was facing Holland. I understand the magnitude, and I do think it's kind of an unfair decision for this board to make. However, if we have to make it, my assumption was the business is facing Holland. That way, we corner the rest of the neighborhood so that it gives the neighbors a little bit of relief from the business. That was a strong suggestion and made by the planning board, not just a few trees abutting the back neighbors, but to kind of corner it off where this is a unique piece of land in a unique zone. That's my thought on it.
So your thought is to bring that?
When you say the business is facing, that's the street it faces, and we do have neighbors on that side. I would like to corral those neighbors so that I understand you want to have your business, just open wide to West Chestnut. However, this is R1B. I understand that, the other dealerships have a few houses on the other side on Manley Street. I wasn't here for that, so, however, this decision is before us. I would like to see that your business facing that and corralled all the way around so that we've taken some consideration for the neighbors. Mr. Chair?
No. Well, the public portion is closed. This is strictly for the board. So your suggestion is to put this arborvitae barrier the whole length of Ramsdale Street to West Chestnut, and then west on West Chestnut Street to Holland Street?
I would like to see that. And, the open part is Holland. I understand that you want the street traffic, the visibility, but that's the same, this is where the problem lies. The neighbors don't want that visibility. They don't want to be on top of a business. You don't want to look out and see what sold yesterday. That was why I made that suggestion on the planning board.
So it sounds like the business would front on Holland Street rather than on West Chestnut Street.
Yeah, the business could be, wide open on Holland Street. They get the visibility from one way of the traffic, but just not coming from the neighborhood side. That's the unique piece of the land, and that was why I suggested it.
Yeah, I'm okay with adding that in as a stipulation.
You're echoing very high down. You're going to have to really speak up.
I said I'm okay with adding that in as a stipulation.
We can discuss that, yes, that what you're going to suggest is, I don't know what you're suggesting. Are you saying from where it starts at Tupelo Street, all the way down Ramsdale, and then west on West Chestnut?
No,
I'll take that, Mr. Landis, if you don't mind.
Go right ahead.
My suggestion would be, from West Chestnut and Holland, take that berm and that suggestion and you wrap it all the way around Ramsdale, where it abuts neighbors across the street from West Chestnut, so they have 25 feet. They can see green, they don't see metal all the way around.
Okay, so we're looking at some things that if this does get approved, some stipulations that the board feels comfortable with. So let's take right now this berm situation. What they're proposing is a 6-foot berm as shown on this plan. It appears as though what they've shown is these trees to be about 22 feet apart. We heard in the discussion that they are willing to find arborvitaes that are already 20 feet high and plant them about 10 feet apart on the top of this berm that would be about 10 feet across on the top of the berm.
Right, and it's a arborvitae that grows to a potential of 40 feet. That was also mentioned in the planning board, which is not new tonight.
Right, there's a name for that, Jolly Green Giant or whatever.
Thuja, Thuja.
There is.
And they grow to 40 feet.
So now, are you proposing to go down to the front corner of the proposed warehouse, pick it up from there, down to West Chestnut, and then turn and go west to Holland Street?
What I'm suggesting is the corner of West Chestnut and Holland, wrapped all the way down to, wherever Ramsdale, the paper street, you can't see that from the road. You don't know exactly where it's placed unless you're a land surveyor from the street. Wrapped around that corner where the blinking yellow light is.
Okay, so the problem we're running into here is an engineering situation. We're sitting here trying to re-engineer this plan. That's what we're trying to do here. And what we should be doing is voting on this plan that's in front of us. There are stipulations that we can put on here, but I just want to caution the board that we got to be very careful that we don't try to totally re-engineer what has been proposed before us. So if that is one of the situations that we're talking about, of 240 feet of arborvitaes along West Chestnut Street, and then a certain distance heading southerly on Ramsdale Street, you're going to have to pick up a number, and it looks like to the corner of the building, it's 135 feet. To the center line of where the proposed parking is, it looks like it's 35 feet. So the bump out where it's 121.8 on your elevation, that bump out appears to be probably about 50 feet south from West Chestnut on Ramsdale. So with those rough numbers, is the board member suggesting that we designate at least 50 feet of these arborvitaes on Ramsdale Street and 240 feet on West Chestnut?
I believe that's correct.
All right, a couple of things we got to talk about here. First of all, David Lynch has been a very upstanding individual in the city. He's done a lot for the city. What we're talking about tonight is not an individual. We're not talking about his business. We're talking about transforming a piece of residential property into commercial. There are certain things that this zoning board can do to address specific issues regarding a piece of property, and that's basically what we do every time we come here. Somebody's got a problem where their foundation is too close to the side yard setback, or it's too close to the street. And because of what we see, we grant them a variance. We say, you have a high. In this case here, when this industrial park was laid out, there was a very specific reason why the industrial and the residential butted up against each other on Ramsdale Street. My opinion, as one board member, is that what is being proposed here, or I should say it came down to Holland Street, and then Holland Street was residential. There are elected officials in this city that create the layout of this city, and they determine what the zoning is in the city. We are an appointed board. We don't determine what zoning is. Our job as an appointed body is to determine if somebody has a unique problem relative to what they're trying to put on a specific piece of property. This piece of property, all the way to Linwood Street, was specifically left as residential for some reason. For us as an appointed board to radically change what was determined to be residential for a reason is a stretch. That's my opinion. So, before we take a vote on this, there are certain things that we need to address here. One is the situation with the berm. I think what I'm hearing is the berm as shown on the plan is acceptable to the board. However, the top of the berm shall be not less than 6 feet wide, and the arborvitae shall be not more than 10 feet apart. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. There should be something in here that these arborvitaes are going to be preserved and maintained in perpetuity. So once these arborvitaes are put in there, somebody's got to maintain them. Somebody is going to have to go out there and water these trees so that they don't die. So 2 years from now, we're looking at a bunch of dead trees sitting out there, okay? The other issue is the parking. There is a lot of parking here, over 350 vehicles. This lot extends over 1,000 feet deep, which encompasses over 350 parking places. I have a concern on water retention. I asked about that. If there's an impervious piece of surface that's put on this parking lot, what is going to happen when we have heavy rain? Is it going to run off into the adjacent properties, which is now a smaller portion of farmland? We're told that there's going to be a retention basin that's going to be put on the property, and we also heard that there's a high water table. So in effect, if this retention thing is put in the parking lot, how much actual water will this thing take? And we're talking a parking lot here that's hundreds of feet long. The lighting issue, he told us that they are going to put up poles with lights that face downward. We have no idea where these lights are going to be located. We don't know what kind of lights they are. We don't have an engineering plan to tell us how far these lights are going to be placed apart. If this was an industrial area, I would wholeheartedly support light packs all over the building because it's an industrial area. We need to light up everything for security. This is not the case. So we have no lighting plan. So I guess if we're going to think about approving this, what's the board's feeling on lighting? Are we going to say downward lighting and that's it? Anybody? All right, so I'm going to put, if it's approved, that all the lighting has to be downward. And it cannot spill over onto the adjacent neighborhood.
I think, Mr. Chairman, in regards to the lighting, if, obviously these arborvitaes are gonna be gargantuan, in all honesty, I think downward lighting would still protect, because where's it gonna go? When these things are grown, we're 20 feet on top of a 6-foot berm. I mean, we're almost looking, we're gonna put a roof over this whole entire property. You know what I mean? It's like, downward lighting obviously will work, because it can't go out anyways, even with those arborvitaes there. So although there's not a lighting plan, is that really for us to determine, I guess is my question.
Well, I guess what I'm looking at here is we could have a lighting pole that's 50 feet high with light shining down, and it's downward and it satisfies our determination, as opposed to a pole that's 20 feet high with lighting facing down. We don't know any of that. So I guess what I'm putting here as a stipulation is that any on-site lighting has to be downward without spillover onto the adjacent properties. The hours of operation, he told us he shuts down at 6 o'clock at night. So I guess what we're going to hear is that there won't be any activity going on in this warehouse after 6 o'clock at night till probably 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. However, if a wrecker or flatbed brings a wreck into this property, they will have the ability to go onto the property and drop that car out in the back lot. And that could be happening at any hour. but it sounds to me like what I heard is that the operations that are going to be taking in this warehouse and repair facility will shut down at 6 o'clock at night. Is that what we heard?
Right, yes.
Okay. He also told us that he is willing to give up his Class 3 license, which is his salvage license. That was determined at the planning board, and he agreed to that. I don't know how he can survive without having a Class 3 license, but he's agreed to do that. And so if that's a stipulation that's put on this, that the salvage, there will be no salvage license for this location. And that would have to be a stipulation on zoning, because a year from now or 6 months from now, he may go to the License Commission looking for a Class 3 license for this location. And the License Commission would have to know that the zoning board, in their decision on granting this, determined that there shall not be a Class 3 license.
Now, can we put a stipulation on the license just to obtain parts?
Pardon me?
Can we put a stipulation on the license just to obtain parts?
I don't want to get into that because I don't understand how those licenses work. To be honest with you, I'm not a licensed guy. All I'm hearing is he is willing to give up the Class 3 salvage license in order to do what he wants to do up here. How he's going to work around that is his business. I'm not going to get involved in how a license operates, personally. The last time they were here, they wanted a roof sign. They've come back to us now and said there will be no roof sign. And additionally, they are going to have to be, or we're going to have to grant them a variance to allow them to sell used vehicles. If you remember, when the trucking company went up on West Chestnut Street, they were allowed to go in there by right and sell new vehicles, but they could not sell used vehicles. So they came before zoning, and we had to grant them a variance to allow them that if a customer came in with an old truck to buy a new one, the dealer could then sell the old truck. The only way he could do that was we granted him a variance. Now, in this case here, he's not in the industrial area, he's sitting in a residential area. So he can't sell vehicles here without a variance to sell vehicles. So we're going to have to grant him a variance to sell vehicles. So anyway, that's what I've got down for stipulations, and when it comes to a vote, those are the stipulations. If it is successful, those are the stipulations that I have made note of. Is there anything else the board wants to make note of? Well, I think we've reached the situation here where I'm going to ask for someone to make a motion, and it's time to take a vote.
I'll make a motion to grant with the stipulations that you mentioned earlier.
I'll second.
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to grant the variance for what has been proposed, plus a variance to allow them to sell used cars with all of the stipulations that we have talked about here tonight. Motion's been made and seconded. The clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Lanus.
Yes.
Chief Nardelli.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Chair Galligan.
No.
Mr. Chair, that's 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative.
The vote is 4 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative. The petition is granted. Does the board need to take a 2-minute recess? Anybody want to get up and stretch or whatever? About the clerk.
Just get it done with.
Okay, the next petition is 2188. The petition of Eugene Flynn II, 55 First Street, Taunton, Mass, for a variance from Article 3, Section 27.9 and 27.13A to construct a single-family home on an existing lot in an R1C zone located at Plot 49 Thatcher Street.
You didn't have to announce that, I'm the only one left. Ready for me?
All right, before you start, I just
Good
want
evening,
to,
Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
just before you start, I just want to enlighten the board that you were before us about a year ago, and it became an issue of possible variance, and you withdrew. And these lots had been divided up many years ago, and this particular lot that we're dealing with tonight was an approved lot, but not a buildable lot.
Yes, I was going to go through that history.
Okay, all yours.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Attorney John McCluskey, representing Eugene Flynn, the petitioner, who actually could not be with us this evening. As the chairman indicated, this lot on Thatcher Street is a vacant lot. It had been approved by the board. It previously was a much larger lot 4 in a land court petition. At some point back in I think the early 80s, it was divided up into, Lot 4 was divided up into 5 separate lots. This one lot, being number 5 on the land court plan, has 100 feet of frontage, significant depth, and 16,609 square feet. Back in the mid to late 70s, the owner of the property came before the Board of Appeals and received a variance to allow for this and actually a couple other lots to become. The Board of Appeals approved that variance petition. Through the course of time, I think for financial reasons and the economy, the lot was not built upon and the variance lapsed. Back in the mid-1980s, I think 1985, the owner came before the board again, seeking a variance for the same lot, 16,609 square feet, 100 feet of frontage, and received a variance to build a single-family home. And I actually was before the board back in about a year ago, probably, seeking a couple of things. One, because all of those lots had been divided, and this was the last lot, I call it an orphan lot, because that lot, all the lots had been divided, some of which I think were built upon, some not. I asked the board to consider two things, a variance and to consider that perhaps one of those old variances was still in effect because it had been acted upon due to the division of the lots. During the course of the hearing, the chairman indicated that there was significant wetlands on the property, and therefore I perhaps should have gone before the Conservation Commission to get an order of conditions. I withdrew, over the objection of a member, I withdrew the variance petition. The board actually voted on my request to consider the old variances in effect, still in effect, and they denied that. But I did withdraw the variance request, therefore preserving my right to come before you again. Through the course of the several months since that hearing, my client has gone to the Conservation Commission, submitted a detailed plan, I think had 2 or 3 meetings with Concom. Concom, and I put that in my package for you, approved a fairly detailed order of conditions wherein the home is built to as you look at the lot, to the left, it's a four-bedroom, single-family home, driveway to the side. Approved that configuration, All of the bells and whistles relative to Concom have been met, wetlands protection, et cetera. The interesting thing here is this is registered land, and the city actually installed drainage, which ends up draining over the property. This lot probably was not a wetlands lot many, many years ago, but the city created a wetlands situation on the lot. The interesting thing is that they've been trespassing effectively for many, many years. This is registered land, and you cannot acquire any adverse rights or adverse possession or rights to drain your water onto the property. But nonetheless, it is what it is. And now there's a significant area of wetlands. So we worked with Conservation Commission, got their approval, and we're back to you tonight seeking a variance to construct a single-family home. The lot has 100 feet of frontage, 16,609 square feet, so it's a pretty good-sized lot and a lot larger than many of the lots in the area. All of the wetlands considerations have been properly addressed through the construction. We have a plan that will comply with all of the orders of condition, and we respectfully request that the board approve a single-family home lot here, as the board has done on 2 prior occasions. The hardship, there are several, actually. One, because of the history here and the variance is being granted in this lot, we've effectively got a so-called orphan lot. I've driven by it a couple of times, and people, have taken the liberties of dumping things onto the lot, and it really is not it's not an attractive vacant lot. The city has created a wetlands on the lot, another hardship, but we've got plenty of room to build a single-family home to the left. It's registered land, and because of the variances that have been approved and the unusual shape, size, soil conditions because of the wetlands, et cetera, this is a fairly classic hardship situation. The home, Brockton is interesting as many places. We don't have a lot of new homes. Well, we've got some subdivisions that have been approved, but still, overall, Brockton needs new construction, new homes that families can move into. There's plenty of room on this lot. This is a fairly typical type of lot that the board has approved in the past, and we've addressed the concerns of the chair relative to the wetlands issues. So all of that being said, I would respectfully request that the board approve a variance for this, for the lot size, shape, and the frontage. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from board members? None. I'm going to open it up to public discussion. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Seeing none, is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Seeing no one in the room, we did have a letter that came in from an abutter that was concerned with flooding relative to Thatcher Square and water that has come down from Jacob Street. It appears that this water situation would not be exacerbated by what is being proposed to us tonight. This is another whole situation that would not, in my opinion, be affected by this house being placed here. So anyway, we have one letter of opposition. Anyone else? No one here in opposition? I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there any public official here that wants to be heard on the issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. I'm going to now open it up to board discussion. Members of the board, what do you got to say?
Mr. Chairman, I would say that it looks to me, just going over these plans, there's been quite a lot of engineering done to try to remedy a problem that may not, from understanding what council says, part of it might not be their fault in regards to this. Sounds like there's other runoff issues that have created part of this problem that now they're dealing with in engineering.
The last time they came before us, one of the concerns with the board was the flow of water on that property. And he went back to the developer and the Conservation Commission. It appears as though they've created a retention to collect water that's going to come off of the roof and the drains. So the water situation that this board was concerned with relative to the construction of that house has been addressed. The other water situation is a drain issue, which is not addressed by conservation, and it actually creates a hardship on the lot because they can't develop that portion of the lot.
Understood.
Anybody want to make a motion?
Make a motion to grant.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded to grant. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Lanus.
Yes.
Chief Nardelli.
Yes.
Mr. Sweeney.
Yes.
Chair Galligan.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, that's 5 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative.
The vote is 5 in the affirmative, none in the negative. The petition is granted.
Thank you, members of the board.
Thank you. Now, we go back to the first case that was delayed until the end of the meeting. Are the petitioners here for that case?
Yep.
Okay, hold on 1 minute. We'll be ready for you in just a second. Okay, our next petition is petition number 2180, the petition of Noah Lee Andre, 106 Moraine Street, Brockton, Mass. For a variance from section 27.9 to convert a single-family home into a two-family home in an R2 zone located at 106 Moraine Street, not avenue, but street.
Yes, indeed. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board. Thank you. And pardon my delay. I had an exam earlier. That's why I got here later.
All right, just give your name to the clerk.
Yes, Noah Lee Andre.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'm here again on behalf of my mom, Marie Y. Andre, and we've been working on a renovation project at our home on 106 Moraine Street we got a blueprint, which I believe you guys have a copy of. We worked with an engineer to do so, and we're working with LKS Construction, which is the construction company that's going to be overseeing the project. And based on all of the information we've been receiving so far, in order to get the permission to turn our home into a two-family home, we need a variance, which is why we're here today. So if there are any questions or concerns from the board, I'm here to answer those for y'all this evening. But essentially, to give you a little bit more context, the reason why we're turning the home into a two-family home is because of the size of our family has grown here in Brockton. It would just be important for us to make sure that there's enough space to accommodate all the members in the household. So if that is a concern, I want to make sure to address that this isn't for commercial use, it's strictly for our family.
Okay. Board members, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair. In going through your very detailed plans, I notice it would be B/A-1. I see 3 bedrooms and a sitting area in the basement. Is that correct?
Pardon, can you repeat that one more time, please?
In the basement, it's Plan B/A-1. I see in that plan, it's the existing basement as it's labeled.
Mm-hmm.
I see 3 bedrooms and 1 sitting area.
So the existing basement is not a part of like the renovation project for this?
No, I understand, but I'm just confirming, you gave us this documentation. I'm
Okay.
confirming what you gave us.
Okay.
I understand, and you just need to confirm. I'm seeing 3 basements and 1 sitting area, basically living space in the basement for domicile bedrooms,
Okay,
correct?
understood.
Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. In some investigation, I checked with the building department. None of that was permitted. I know that's, tonight we're talking about the second family, but I have deep concerns about those apartments, or that apartment in the basement, as they were not permitted. That then brings me to my question about this back area where you're asking for this variance. You definitely do not have your correct setbacks from almost everything. Side setback is only 11 feet, should be 20. Setback to the garage is only 8 foot, should be 8 feet, it should be 30. Rear setback is 25 feet, 5 inches, should be 25, so you're good there. And no additional parking spaces for this second family. So I guess what I'm looking at is a multitude of different things, not to mention the setback off of Sycamore that is incorrect as well. It appears to me that you're removing the basement bedrooms in the next stage of this building project. Is that correct?
I don't know if I can answer that because I don't have the technical background and context.
Well, no, I'm just
Yeah.
going by what you showed in the plans. It
Okay.
shows that you've removed them, but I guess my concern is, obviously, the multitude of setbacks, obviously, because you're not in, there's not just one thing, it's multiple. Bigger concern long-term safety-wise is those bedrooms in the basement, especially as they were not permitted, so they do not have the proper basement apartment codes
Yes,
that
from the
would be done
conversation-
under the building department.
Okay. From the conversations we've had with our contractor and the engineer, all of that is going to be up to code based on their technical background and the work that they're doing for us. So that's how I can confidently answer that question, is they're guiding us to make sure that we're doing everything up to city code and standard.
Did you put those apartments in there?
No, so all of this work the blueprint was done by our engineer and was overseen by our contractor who's.
No, the bedrooms that are currently there in the basement, were those done by you? Or since you've owned the home? Or was they there when you bought?
So originally, when my mom first moved into the home, we did do some renovation in the basement when we first moved in to
Put those
accommodate some
bedrooms in?
family members. Yeah.
And put those bedrooms in? Okay.
Yeah. So once they came and surveyed the property, it's my understanding that all that has to be destroyed and redone so that it could be up to code and standard.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Mr.
I
Chairman.
guess my question is, piggybacking on that, those 3 bedrooms that are in the basement in the old section of the house, after all these renovations are done, they're going to remain in the basement?
So it's not going to be livable space. It's going to be used as storage because that's why we wanted to turn it to a 2-family home so that the other rooms on the main floors would be used as livable space.
So the basement bedrooms
just
that are
be-
there now will be eliminated?
Yeah, because they can't, based on what the engineer and the contractor explained to us, it's not up to code for it to be livable space. Something with the windows and length and all these things, so it's not technically livable space, so no one can live down there. So if the project does get approved and we have the renovation on, all that stuff would have to be destroyed, and it would just have to be a standard basement.
So when I looked at the plans, it appears as though there's going to be 5 bedrooms on one side and 5 bedrooms on the other, for a total of 10 bedrooms in the whole place?
Yeah, but I believe from that it's just the labeling of the words on the actual permit, on the actual blueprint, but not necessarily all those rooms are going to be used as bedrooms.
Any other questions from any board members?
Now, both basements, both basements, the old basement
On
and the
each
new one?
side, yes.
Just gonna be for storage?
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's going from a 3-bedroom to 10-bedroom?
Based on the labeling of the word, sure. That's how it appears on the blueprint, yes.
And it's my understanding that there's no added parking anywhere for 5 bedrooms
And
each?
the reason why we thought that'd be okay is because it's just one family, it's just us. So, and there aren't additional cars on the lot, so that's why, since it's just us, we didn't think it'd be necessary to have additional parking space.
So if I could, you're actually making this into a 2-family, but it's actually one family living
Right,
there.
it's just one family unit, but it's gonna be separated for privacy. Because, my brother has his wife and our niece, and then the other family members will be living on that side, and my mom will be staying on the existing side that currently is there.
Will there be a will there be monies exchanged for your brother
No, not
living?
from the family, no.
It's just, you
Yeah.
live there, you live there.
Yeah.
Any other questions from any board members? We're good? I'm
when
going to
you
close that
have-
portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in?
Had a quick question.
I'm sorry?
Now, will I have separate meters? Separate electric meter and gas meter, or is that,
Yeah, yes, I believe so, yes.
Separate?
There's gonna be, both sides will have their own separate units and meters, yeah.
okay.
What was the question, on meters?
Yeah, the gas meter, electric
Yeah.
meter, if those are gonna be separate, since it's one family, they're gonna have just one meter? for the
I don't know
entire-
what the code is on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Is the board all set? Steve, you all set?
All set.
Okay. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in favor? Is there anyone, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there anyone here that wants to speak in opposition? Christine, we didn't really get any letters on this from anybody. No.
Nothing at all.
I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. Is there any elected officials here that want to be heard on this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close that portion of the hearing. I'm now going to close the public hearing, and open it up to the board members for deliberation. Board members.
I see an issue with the parking. It's gonna be really tight. When I went down there was a lot of, off-road parking, a lot of cars. So that's one of my concerns. And, my other concern is when they sell the house, I'm sure whoever buys it will use it as commercial.
Yeah,
You know,
I would
I'm
agree.
going to indulge the board for 1 minute. I failed to ask him what his hardship was on this. If he did, I didn't hear it. Did anybody hear it?
No.
I'm going to give you an opportunity to address the board. What is the hardship on this? What's so unique about this?
Well, so my mom immigrated from Haiti after the first earthquake, and at 60 years old has done really well for herself to buy this property. And because of the political unrest in our country that continues to persist, we have a lot of family members that come to the country, and the home we have here is a refuge. And that's really the main reason why we're pushing to, because we need space to make sure our families have somewhere to keep their heads.
Okay, very
And to
good.
the point of selling, given our socioeconomic status and the things going on in this country, I am pretty sure I can say emphatically and confidently that the house won't be sold because there's nowhere else for us to go.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's
Yes,
get
sir.
back to board deliberations. So one of the issues we've talked about is the lack of parking.
Well, the raw number of bedrooms, eventually the property does get sold, all property does, in however that's used, will factor in at some point. That is my concern also.
Looking at the plans, it would appear that this could very well be two separate units, two-family house.
Well, I would agree. I would say that's why the privacy's put in. I know as of right now, it is two different, it'll end up being two different residents at some point.
He needs 10,000 square feet for a two-family house, and he's got 6,600. He's quite deficient on square footage. The other thing is the garage, it's supposed to be 10 feet from the house. There's no dimension there. Parking's going to be a huge issue with the number of bedrooms, so.
When looking at this, I know I measured it out, but when driving by it, it looks much closer to that garage than it even is, with what we see on the plans.
Right. It would appear that the density for this piece of property for what he's planning to do is pretty strong, so. All right, if there's no other discussion, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve in the hopes that it fails?
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded with the hopes that it does not pass. The clerk will please call the roll.
Mr. Bernard.
Yes.
Mr. Lanus.
No.
Chief Nardelli.
No.
Mr. Sweeney.
No.
Chair Galligan.
No.
Mr. Chair, that's 1 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative.
Okay, the vote is 1 in the affirmative, 4 in the negative. The petition is denied.
Okay. So may I ask a question before we depart? Is that okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. So is there modifications that need to happen in order for us to renovate the project? So a two-family home, I understand, is not possible, but if we wanted to continue with the renovation project, what steps would we have to take so that we could get the
I think what you're going to have to do is talk to somebody from the building department,
Okay,
and they will kind of guide you on what your options are, what you can do. But what you have proposed before us tonight is what has been denied.
understood.
Okay?
All right,
Thank you.
so much.
All right, gentlemen, before we wrap up tonight's meeting, we need to think about what we're going to do for a chairperson for the next. What I'm going to do is call for a vote on electing a chairperson for the Zoning Board of Appeals for the next year. So with that, I will open up for nominations. Has anybody got a nomination?
I nominate Ken Galligan.
I second. That was like the quickest one we've had all night.
Okay, the first nomination is Galligan that has been seconded. Are there any other names to be brought before the board?
Don't all stay so quiet.
One thing a board member can say is close the nominations.
Close the nomination. Please.
Second? Do they have to second that?
Okay, a motion has been made and seconded to close the nominations. Got that, Christine?
Do you like Ken?
Yeah, Ken Galligan, so of course.
You got that, Christine?
Sorry, no, I didn't.
A motion was made to close the nominations.
Yes, I got that.
Okay, so there is one name that has been submitted, and the nominations have been closed. So will the clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Bernard, what do you vote for chair?
Yes. He said yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, meaning,
Yes for you.
Mr. Lanus,
Yes.
for Mr. Galligan? Yes, for Mr. Galligan?
Yes, for Mr. Galligan.
Okay. Chief Nardelli
Yes, Mr. Galligan.
and Mr. Sweeney.
Yes, from Mr. Galligan.
Mr. Galligan,
unfortunately, yes, Mr. Gallagher.
congratulations, Mr. Chair.
All right, the vote is 5-0. The board has elected member Galligan to be the chairperson for the next year. As chairperson, I am going to designate a person, a vice chairman, number 2, in case I am not here, and I would like to nominate Steve Bernard. Would you accept that, Steve?
Yes, I accept.
Okay, so Steve is going to be our vice chairman for the next year. All right, having no further business to come before the board, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.